First thing I'd like to say is hello. I'm Scott Stoll. My background is in, and you really probably don't care about anything I do, so that's my intro. No, I do a bunch of social media stuff with Flutter, blog posts, this, that, and the other. I run a Zoom that we call The Office for freelancers. We're open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So if you're working on Flutter at home alone and you don't want to sit in a silent room, come hang out with us. We started it in a nutshell because we all were tired of working alone and tired of waiting 3 hours for an answer on Stack Overflow. So everyone's working, listening to music, and then next thing you know is, hey, can you guys take a look at this? So we all stop, somebody shares their screen. It's like, oh yeah, I ran into that last week. Give me control of your screen. So they take control of your mouse and keyboard. They fix the problem in like 3 minutes. Back to work again. So this is so much better than posting a question on Stack Overflow and staring, refreshing the screen over and over again. I am the owner of the Flutter public Slack. If you go to flutter.dev community page, you click on the Slack there, you end up in my Slack. If for any reason that stupid link fails again, hit me up on Twitter. You'll see the link, the Twitter handle at the end of this, but it's Scott Stoll 2017, SCOTTSTOLL. Yeah, it's spelled right. Good. A couple of observations. Okay, Flutter is so easy and so fast to use that these two just wrote an app in the last 25 minutes while they're sitting here. Okay. Tied it into cloud, ML, everything, all done. The other thing, too, you will notice I am wearing GDG socks. Okay, it goes with the Flutter shirt. Okay, I have a wonderful jacket. I have a backpack from Google. So if anyone from Google is watching this, I need pants. Okay, I need some pants. We're kind of pushing it there. We're kind of pushing it. Now, Patrick and I talked about the pants idea, okay? He thought that we should have them embroidered down the leg. I'm thinking across the rear end. But either way, it's cool. All right, go right ahead. So we might be changing this talk. Every single time I've given it so far, I've had a room full of developers and we had to take a hard left. So how many people here are product owners, business owners, leads who have to make decisions about what technology to use, or you're more worried about the bottom line and your lead time than you are about actually being able to code? 1, 2. Okay, that's not too bad. How many of you are more worried about coding and being able to use it? Okay. So, number one, we're going to take a left. Number two, the good news for the product owners and such, I can put the information you need into this, but it's going to become much more technical than we originally thought. So, give me a second. Okay, lovely. It always puts it on the wrong screen. Now, this is going to take a really, really long time to change over, as you can see. Yeah. Okay, and I'm trying to remember. I am trying to remember how in the world to make this thing go full screen over here. It should have done it automatically. Oh, thank you. Yep, there we go. Let me grab this first. Okay, no, I don't want to make you smaller. There we go. And I have a trackball because it works better on airplanes. Alrighty, Flutter 101, not the original that we had thought. Another couple of quick things. For Flutter, there is a service for continuous integration, CI/CD, and they're wonderful people, great human beings. They pay me for writing blogs. The checks cash on time. So if you want some Code Magic stickers, and also I have the more important Flutter stickers in large and small. Remember, stickers make the laptop go faster. So if you're running an i3, there is hope. All right. What is Flutter? Flutter is a mobile-ish. That should be cross-platform-ish as well. When people think of cross-platform, they're thinking iOS and Android. That's not what Flutter is. Now, one of the most important things to understand and remember is what Flutter is and what Flutter is not. Okay, when they first announced Flutter last December, it was announced as a UI toolkit, and that went right past everyone. Nobody even thought about that term, and they should have. Okay, because you've got people out there running around, especially on Reddit, saying, oh, Flutter sucks. It doesn't access the IMU. I'm having trouble getting to the camera. It doesn't natively access the camera. It doesn't natively do blah, 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 blah. You know, Bluetooth, camera, IMU, GPS. Okay? Is that the job of a UI toolkit? Or is that the job of the operating system? Did we say Flutter is an operating system? No. We never said Flutter is an operating system. People are making assumptions because you can write so much in Flutter that you forget there are things it can't do. You can write your business logic in Flutter. You can do all your state management in Flutter. You can access you can do all your JSON in Flutter. You can reach out to your HTTP in Flutter. You can do your Firebase in Flutter. No, you can't do the camera directly in Flutter. That's the OS. Now, there are plugins that will allow you to talk to the OS and make this happen. So remember what Flutter is and what Flutter is not. It is not an operating system. It is a UI toolkit with some seriously awesome back-end capabilities. So it's not just UI. Cross-platform-ish. When they first announced Flutter, they were talking about iOS and Android, iOS and Android, iOS and Android. And the community said, well, cool, but there's this code buried in the SDK. What is this here? This runs on Windows desktop. And the team said, well, what happened was we were having trouble getting an emulator to run, and it wouldn't quite work right. So we did this in order to troubleshoot, and we were running directly on Windows desktop. And once we fixed the problem, it just kind of like that code kind of just stayed there. We never deleted it. Oh, really? Play toy. People grabbed it and ran with it. Next thing you know, they had it up and running again. We were putting Flutter apps out on Windows desktop, which, of course, the Linux and Mac people said, you're not leaving us out. And they got on it and started talking to the Flutter team, and because everybody was tight back then. This is before beta. Okay, there was one place to go to talk to people about Flutter. It was called Gitter. If nobody's ever heard of Gitter, you get it one with every GitHub repo. Nobody uses the stupid thing. It's single-threaded. Somebody asks a question, and then another question, and then you see an answer, but that answer was to a question from 8 hours ago. Nobody uses this thing, but the Flutter team used it. So everybody knew each other because we only have one chat channel. So we started talking about what are we going to do with desktop, and the Flutter team's like, well, we don't have the head count for that, which means they don't have the budget for the people. We don't have the money for it. It's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on just making it do its thing. Well, then they turned around at Flutter Live and said, oh, by the way, we've got desktop efforts. And we're like, you what? Really? Gee, I wonder who had that idea. So now they're going to Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, and iOS. By the way, Dart is the language that Flutter uses. What was Dart originally? It was supposed to try to be a JavaScript replacement in Chrome. Dart went to the web before it went anywhere else. So now Flutter was easily ported over, and you can run your Flutter apps on the web. The New York Times Ken Puzzle is a Flutter app. There are a number of others out there right now too. There is also Fuchsia. Fuchsia is an operating system that will be coming out a while from now. A lot of people are speculating it's going to be coming out a lot sooner than it is. Don't hold your breath on this coming out anytime really soon. Fuchsia runs on a microkernel called Zircon. Okay, it is a small enough kernel, it will probably run inside of a stupid laser pointer. And it's meant for things like refrigerators, alarm clocks, and all kind of tiny stuff, IoT. And it also is being aimed at phones. Now, Fuchsia's interface, its actual UI, is driven by Flutter. So they are made to go hand in hand. However, word of warning, if you watch the job postings, Google just put out recently 3 DPE jobs, developer program engineers, for Fuchsia. These are the people who write the sample code, they write the code labs, they write things like that. Developer advocates are the ones who get out and talk to people about it and do presentations. Now, to give you an idea, they had DAs doing talks on Flutter before they even had an idea of when the date for beta was going to be. They already had DAs out doing talks. Fuchsia right now has 0 DAs. I asked a friend of mine who knows, and I said, you know, I'm in the pipeline, I could be a DA at some point. Where are we looking at with Fuchsia? And he's like, they're not even thinking about it. They've got 1 DPE, they've got ads up looking for 2 more DPEs. DAs are not even on the horizon yet. So don't hold your breath for Fuchsia to be coming around the corner. It's not that close. All right, so with all of this, the reason Flutter can go all the places that it can go is Flutter's a game engine. Okay, even Eric Seidel, lead engineer of the team, says it's a game engine. It's Clash of Clans. It's Bubble Witch. Okay? What Flutter actually is doing in Android terms, it says, give me a surface view. Thank you, get out of my way. It's painting directly to the canvas, OpenGL canvas, and it can get an OpenGL canvas anywhere. Any platform. That's important. So let's see how far I got ahead of my slides. Not just iOS and Android. Yeah, I think we talked about that. Under the hood, it is standalone. It is ahead of time compiled. That's huge. That's the biggest difference. It isn't executable. It runs on any OpenGL canvas. Now, you compile it. You don't bundle build anymore. When this was originally written, you did. You only write your code one time. Unless you have specific code that you want to reach down into your operating system for things like, oh, I don't know, camera, Bluetooth. You don't access the camera on an iPhone the same way you do on an Android phone, the same way you do on a Windows desktop, right? So you're going to have to use those channels individually, but if you're not interfacing with the hardware, you write it once and you're done, really. It's that easy. So, again, it is ahead of time compiled. This is machine code. All right. Name me any other way to release to Android that is machine code. Those all compile to bytecode. We don't use bytecode. Not in Flutter. Also, we don't use the UI elements from Android or iOS. When you look at a Flutter app, and you're on that list, and it's lazy loading, okay? You're showing 10, it's rendering like 13. You say, it's a recycler view. No, it's not. It's a list view. We're not using the recycler view. This is not React. I'm sorry, it's not React Native, because we're not using the native components. We're using our own. Remember, it's Clash of Clans. It's a game engine. Guess what? The UI elements are the things in your game, but they are pure Flutter. What happened here is the material design specifications and the human interface guidelines are public. This is how big everything you touch is supposed to be. This is what the contrast is supposed to be. This is what it should look like. I asked a DA one time, I said, how is it that Google has so perfectly imitated pixel for pixel every single part of an iOS interface, and they're not getting their pants sued off by Apple? You know what he said? Legal doesn't let us answer legal questions. Thanks, Wim. Really helpful. Not. I have since learned that Apple published the human interface guidelines, and the Flutter team just used them. They very carefully and painstakingly sat down and made sure that all their stuff complied with what Apple said, please do this if you're releasing on iOS. Google said, okay, we'll do it. And when you release on iOS, your Flutter app, an iPhone user is looking at it and they don't know. They have no idea that this wasn't written in Swift. It looks, reacts, feels, has all the physics acceleration, everything that they're used to. They can't tell the difference, and you know what? That's the point. If you want a brand first UI that is all completely yours and custom, you can do that. No problem at all. This is a game engine. You can make it do whatever you want. But there is a massive caveat. If you download an app and that user has the least little bit of a problem trying to figure out how to use it, you're going to be uninstalled so fast you won't know what hit you. They take an app, put it in their hand, and they expect to be able to use it without a tutorial, which means it's got to look like what they're used to. It has to behave like the way they has to behave how they expect it to behave, or you're done. Okay, so don't forget that. Don't underestimate the power of the uninstall button and what it can do to you. So you don't want your users to be able to know the difference. However, yes, you can make it do anything you want custom. Cool little story. A friend of mine was doing this tutorial. He wanted to make an egg timer. So what he did was he took a container, which basically made it square. The origin is in the top left. So then he moved it 50% of its width and moved it down 50% of its height. Now, his aim point, or his starting point, is right here. Then he moved it up 200 units, which is in Flutter, we only use DP. There's no SP, no PX. You don't have to worry about it. It's all DP. He does one little stroke, 2 DP wide, 5 DP long. Now, how many of you would just love to do all the math for 60 ticks going all the way around? How much fun is that? That's cool, right? A lot of fun? No. Instead, you know what he did? He kept the center point, he kept his origin point exactly where it was, okay? And then he rotated the canvas 6 degrees. And he went straight up again, and he drew another tick mark in the same exact spot. And then he rotated the canvas 6 degrees. Perfect timer dial. He wasn't drawing the ticks around, he was spinning the canvas and drawing the ticks in the same place. Did this every single time it had to change, and you know what? Over 60 frames per second, zero jank. No problem. Flutter, don't jank. Don't jank, Jack. Now, Dart. One language to rule them all. How many of you are familiar with, oh goodness, let's start here. C, C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, Swift. Did I miss many? Anybody know one of those at least? Come on, of course. Any C-style language. If you know C#, if you've messed with Unity, you already know Dart. All you have to do is dump public and private. Okay, you dump public and private. On your private stuff, you put an underscore in the beginning of it that marks it as private, and you turn everything from upper camel case into lower camel case. Congratulations, you've written a Dart program, you're done. It's really that easy. It's crazy easy, and they say it's just like Swift too. It's harder to go from Java to Dart than it is from C# to Dart. And you can go from Java to Dart in about 20 minutes. Fun joke. Manager with a new hire. Sitting down, they say, all right, we're going to call down to HR. We're going to put you in for an account and an email, and then we're going to start teaching you Dart. And we're going to see which one finishes first. Somebody walking by leans in the door, says, I got 20 bucks on Dart. It is that stupid easy if you already know another C language. So, C syntax with semicolons. Sorry, Kotlin people. No public or private, just right there. Simplified types. Love it. Int, double bool, string, list, enum, map, T for type, reified generics. No float, no char, no long, no short. All right. Could you dig into everything and make it use them? Yeah. Would you want to? Probably not. Why do that to yourself? We don't even use arrays. What? You use lists, not arrays. Are you kidding? People who know lower level stuff, their brains are beginning to hurt right now. Okay? This is why we can get away with it. Garbage collector. This garbage collector came out quite a bit before the newer garbage collector that came out in Android last October. Now, it might have come out in Android before that, but there was a big keynote, and it was a really big deal at DroidCon London. When I was there, everybody was jumping up and down saying all about this great new garbage collector. Yeah, Dart already had it. Okay. Young Space Scavenger Parallel Mark Sweep. It is nowhere near as expensive as you would normally think. What happens here is Flutter uses composition over inheritance. Okay, we do not use inheritance. Everything's a Lego block in Flutter, all the way down, like all the way down to object. It's a Lego block. How many of you are Android developers? Okay, how many of you are really familiar with the view class? 26,000 lines of murderous hell, right? It's the basis of everything. Every single thing in Android has the capability to handle touch because it's in the view class. Why? Why would you do that? In Flutter, no, you've got a render object. Okay, fine. Can it handle touch? No. Do most things need to handle touch? No. But what if I need to handle touch? Wrap it in a gesture detector. Now you've got on tap, you've got on press, you've got on down, you've got on up, you've got on swipe right, left, up, down. You've got on long press, you've got every single thing you could possibly need by wrapping it in a gesture detector. But if you don't need it, why have it? You know, are most of your things capable of rendering beyond the display, like what we call a single child scroll view, you know, something that can scroll off screen? No, absolutely not. Columns can't do that. What happens if you make a column that's too big? You get an overflow. What do you do about the overflow? You wrap it in a single child scroll view. Boom, done. Now you can make a column big as you want. However big you get, it will scroll. No problem. Very, very wasteful if you're trying to make Twitter. It's not lazy loading, it'll load everything. Okay. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. You want to use a list view in that case. But if you build a 747 out of Lego blocks, okay, in your living room, in Flutter, if you want to change the wing, you don't mutate it. If you want the wing to be blue and not yellow, you don't paint it and mutate it. You smash the yellow one and you rebuild it blue. Okay? The reason we can get away with this is that garbage collector. Now, the wing is made up of a whole bunch of tiny little objects. Tens of thousands of them per frame can be swept up. Now, imagine this in your living room. Tens of thousands of tiny little plastic objects and you're in your bare feet. How many of you got small kids who leave stuff like that on the floor? Step on it in the middle of the night? Exactly. But with Flutter, that garbage collector can sweep it all up, and we can get away with things like that. So, tree shaking compiler. If you ain't using it, it doesn't end up in your APK. Period. If you do not use any Java or any other native code to reach into the hardware, to reach into the OS, you don't need to use ProGuard. I see applause. No ProGuard. Now, if you are reaching into the OS to use the hardware, you're going to need to use ProGuard for that part. Okay, obviously. The Dart compiler is not going to tree shake your Java. Can't do that. It can do a lot, but it can't do that. Also, we use code gen, not reflection. This makes our lives a lot easier. No more stripping out unneeded classes. You know, I have been giving this talk for about 18 months and I still need to fix that typo. Maybe I'll just leave it there for fun. iOS. Sometimes they drop support for stuff. Okay, a lot of times they drop support for stuff. Backward compatibility is murderous and it can kill your app in a heartbeat. Not with Flutter. Unless they turn around and say you can't get an OpenGL canvas anymore, then you're untouchable. All right? You can put any UI on any phone, back to iPhone 6 and back to KitKat. You can put an iOS interface on an Android phone. Really mess with your friends. You can put an Android interface on an iPhone. Really make them think their phone's broken. Now, you can actually release back to 19, but at the time I wrote this, the Play Store would not let you put anything older than 26 out. So that's not Flutter, that's the store. Now, why is this important? In a lot of areas of the world, a new phone costs more than a new car. You're talking about Africa, Indonesia, South America, okay, Colombia, Peru, Argentina. So these people cannot go run out and buy the new iPhone, whatever it is this time. Okay, they're not going to run out and buy a Pixel 4. If they're lucky, they can cough up the money for a Pixel 1. Well, this is a very underserved market. And if you can write apps that run at 60 FPS on those phones and that have an interface that looks and behaves identical to the Pixel 4 or the brand new iOS one, there's no reason you can't do that in Flutter. You're not running that hardcore hardware. I'm sorry, you're not running the same software that is much more intensive and needs better hardware. You're still just running a game engine. You just make it look like that stuff. And you know what? You can 99-cent yourself into retirement, because those people will hang on to those phones with a death grip as long as they can keep getting apps, and you can write apps for them all day long. Never underestimate the 3 or 4 billion people living in those countries. And a lot of people are not writing. I mean, a lot of these developers are writing apps that need serious processing power, and these people can't use those apps. So. It's even less now. People were complaining that Flutter adds a whole lot to the SDK because it brings its own UI stuff with it. All right. Now, how much does the Android support library add again? Because people were comparing an Android app without the ASL to a Flutter app that did have its whole amount of support. It's like, no. Now, Flutter has gotten it down to about 4.5 meg, and this was as of a year ago. Okay. Now, I don't see it getting much lower than 4.5 meg because I know to get the base increase to 4.5 meg, they were stripping out dot comments. That was the joke, but yeah, it was pretty close. And here's the other thing too, even if it was 8 meg bigger, what's the storage size on a modern phone? 8 meg is a JPEG, man. You know, come on. If that's the biggest thing you have to complain about, it must be doing pretty well. Rapid prototyping and experimentation. Here's one of the areas where Flutter really shines. Anybody heard of hot reload? Okay, anybody used it? Okay. Imagine this. Everybody here's done a web page, right? You make a change, you hit F5. There it is. Flutter app. You change the size of your button, you hit Control \. 750 milliseconds. Done. Change the color of it? Fine. Move it up? Fine. Down? Fine. Right, left, whatever. Your customer is standing there over your shoulder because you've gone to their shop, to their business, and you're showing them, and they're like, "Can you move that a little bit? Okay, move it up, move it down. Can I see it in purple?" Done. That fast. Hot reload is when you change the state of your object. You change the color of your car class. You changed how many doors it has. If you change it to an airplane, it is no longer a state change. It is an actual object change. Now you need to recompile your Dart code. Did I say rebuild Gradle? Nope. Recompile your Dart code because you have changed what objects are in there. You can't hot reload with a new state if you changed what the objects are. Now this is really, really slow compared to hot reload. If you hit hot restart, you're probably going to have to wait between 6 and 8 seconds on average. Oh, it's terrible. Horrible. It's like hitting Control F5 when you're doing a web page. Okay, I've seen web pages take longer than 6 to 8 seconds to reload after Control F5. Depends if I'm running AT&T. So 3 to 6 seconds is normal instead of Gradle's 3 to 5 business days. One of the things to remember, though, is if you're running an animation, the state of your animation when it reaches completed. Okay? If you hot reload, is it going to restart your animation? The answer is no. Why? Because you didn't change the state of your animation. Hot reload only changes the state of what you told it to change. If you told it to change the car from red to blue, hot reload changes it from red to blue, but you didn't tell it to change the state of the animation back to the beginning. So your animation is going to sit there at the end, still. You use hot restart, it reruns all your init functions, and everything starts all over again. Now, okay, well, I got to watch the order of these. Here's what it comes down to with the UI. Hold my beer. That's all you need to know. Hold my beer. Platform channels. There's actually a better way to draw this. I've redrawn it somewhere else. What the platform channels are doing is it reaches into here and borrows something and then uses it to access this. All your graphics are up here. We are not using anything here for the canvas or events. All that's handled through Flutter. Now, this is Flutter reaching in and borrowing stuff. I need you to go run an errand. I need you to go get me an image from the camera. I need you to connect the Bluetooth, stuff like that. I need you to access the IMU, the GPS. Great. And that all works, and we've all gone over all the rest of this. All the other cross-platform solutions are using bridges. They're using proxies. All this they're using web views. They're written in JavaScript, or they compile to bytecode that has to be interpreted client-side. Okay, Flutter is the only one that releases straight to ahead-of-time compiled binary. And that makes it a lot faster. I am trying to kick up the speed here a little bit. Is there a VM? There was a big argument about this for about 6 days. bunch of people who really knew their stuff were arguing back and forth on Gitter about is there or isn't there a VM? Okay, most of us say no because it is ahead of time compiled. Okay, but some people were saying yes. The reason that they were saying yes is they were talking about the VM that has to interface with the low-level hardware. Well, duh. We thought that was kind of a given. Okay, so it provides a garbage collector, stuff like that. That's kind of a given. Everything is a widget. Okay, a UI element that you can see and touch, a text style declaration, bold, font size, things like that. Animation controllers, your dog, it's a widget. Flutter doesn't care. Until it's not. There are 3 layers in Flutter. There's the widget layer, which they call it an immutable declaration of something, something, something. It's a blueprint, all right? It's a blueprint. Leave it at that. The blueprint is used to make a skeleton of what you declared, which is the element layer, and then makes the render objects, the render layer and the render objects. That's what you're familiar with as views in Android. Those do get mutated by the system. You don't mutate them. You do not do any mutation at the widget layer, which means you're not going to have to run down those bugs anymore. So it makes your life a lot better. I have a talk, Beyond Hello World, goes into that more. Okay, the code is very easy to follow, but it's very strangely laid out. Okay, it's nested. Right here we've got a container. It's 100 high, which is DP. It's going to be purple. In the center, now it's going to center its contents. Its contents is text, hold my beer. Style, the text is going to be black, it's going to be bold, it's going to be font size 14. Now let's close all that up. Very easy to follow. The other thing too is when you have a whole bunch of it and you zoom out, you'll see this nice flow as it goes, and it becomes extremely easy to see what is inside of what and what is a sibling of what as you back out and look at it from a bird's eye view. Now, when you're using it, Alt-Enter is your best friend. It will allow you to refactor things, remove a widget, add padding, centering, all kinds of stuff. Okay, one of the best parts about refactoring is that you can pull out what they call widgets. Basically, if you have a column with a whole bunch of button rows in it, you select that, you say refactor widget, it yanks it out, it turns it into a completely different class, and then it calls that class. If you were using variables in it that were declared and instantiated somewhere else, it will add your variables to it and it will automatically call it with those variables. Now you take that class, cut it out, put it in another file, and reuse it all over your app. Okay? So you do something with Flutter that everybody wants to do elsewhere but can't. We write everything in one file. You just write one file. It's like 2,000 lines long, 4,000 lines long, whatever. When you're done, just put the cursor directly on center. Say refactor, pull out Flutter widget. Okay, bang, done. You give it a name, and it calls it right there as a child. Now you move that over to your new file. You refactor your whole app like that in about 15 minutes. Now it's normal in a whole bunch of different files, and your boss won't kill you.
Yeah, is there?
Is there?
So is that just an example you just wrote?
Yeah, it's a basic example. I mean, you could have that. That is exactly what it's like. Now, I did these in the color scheme that I actually have, but mine's on a dark background. The reason I did this is these are all constructors. Okay, the underline with that color is all constructors. All these are your parameters when you're within your constructors. So these are my IDE colors. When I look at something, I'm just like, psst, and I know what I'm looking at. Easy. One of the fun things is I love you Kotlin people. Kotlin's great. It's fantastic for what Kotlin is supposed to be for. Kotlin is not good for this job. One of the reasons Kotlin is not good for this job is that Dart and Flutter need to be able to compile now in 3 different ways to do what it does. You cannot do hot reload and hot restart unless you are just-in-time compiled. It won't work. You have to be able to inject a new state into running code and have it render the very next frame with your new state in order to pull off hot reload. Okay? In order to compile your release to AOT, now you have to compile into machine code. That's not just in time. So now you've got to compile in two different directions. By the way, if you're releasing to the web, you have to compile in a way that will allow it to come out and be used in a way that will interpret to JavaScript, which this gentleman is going to be doing a talk on next, Flutter for the web. So can Kotlin release in all those different directions and do all that stuff? Unfortunately not. Now there are some people looking at trying to get Kotlin to work with it and make it work that way, and that's great, but in all honesty, the amount of effort that you would put into trying to do that, if you would just do it with, you could put 80 hours into trying to get it to work with Kotlin, or you could do 12 hours in Dart and be done and go hit the bar. Some things aren't worth the effort that it would take to do it. Can you do it? I'm sure you could figure it out. Why would you want to? I mean, unless you're just really stuck on wanting to use Kotlin. I don't know. But you have to be able to compile in all three of those ways before you can do what this can do. So, last slide. I can tell everyone yawning is very glad that this is the last slide. And we finished with 7 minutes to spare so far. But the getter, the single-threaded monstrosity. When I joined it, it wasn't too bad because it tells you how many people are in it. That's why I know I was the 1,310th person to join that getter. I don't know what it's up to now, but it moves at a terrifying speed. The Flutter Dev Google group, this one is extremely important. You don't go to the Flutter Google group or the Flutter Reddit group, you go to Flutter Dev and Flutter Dev Google group. The reason that one is very important is a lot of those questions are answered by the team. Eric Seidel, lead engineer, is answering questions personally in that Google group. So if you want answers you can really depend on, that's where to go. Flutter community on Medium, tons and tons of articles. Lead editor is a friend of mine, Nash Ramdial. I help him out by editing some stuff a lot of times. Flutter community page on Facebook. Flutter Dev is the Twitter tag. If you want to follow really, really cool people, the first thing you have to do is follow this loser right here, okay? Because I try to look cool by following all the cool kids, okay? So you'll even see this guy in my feed. Flutter community on Slack. I'm sorry, the Flutter community Slack. You can reach it by going to flutter.dev community. You can also reach the Discord there run by some really, really cool people, okay? And every Wednesday, tinyurl.com, hump day Q&A. A bunch of us are in there on hump day, Wednesday, doing Q&A all day long. It's basically an open office hours that you would get like in a university with different professors sitting in the room, coming and going. All kind of different Flutter experts from all over the world coming and going. If we really have push come to shove, we've got people who can cover 9 languages. So if somebody comes in there and has a hard time with English, that's okay. All we have to do is figure out what their language is and we'll smack somebody on WhatsApp and say, get in here. Not a problem. Okay, you have a question, sir?
Yeah, it was actually more of a clarification thing because you were talking about, I'm not disagreeing that I think, Dart definitely fits this use case and works great. I just wanted to clarify that Kotlin does technically support native and JavaScript compilation.
Okay. But it does it, well, I guess it would do just in time because it can interpret the bytecode. But does it also do ahead of time machine code?
Yes, so it does
nice.
compile to a native image. There are some limitations there, but I just wanted to clarify.
Oh, not a problem. And that, that is probably why a couple people I know are working on that and they're still spending a lot of time on it. I mean, personally, I don't see why putting all that effort into it because Dart's not that hard. But if that's what they really want to do, if it makes a hack, knock yourselves out. I mean, it's far be it from me to say don't do it. All right, we have a few more minutes for questions. We'll start right here, sir.
How many Flutter apps have you made?
How many Flutter apps have I've helped people out with about 4 or 5. I haven't actually been doing entire apps myself. I spend entirely too much time writing blog posts, writing talks, writing workshops, trying to keep up with chat channels, trying to keep up with email, trying to keep up with WhatsApp. To give you an idea, 3 days ago, I needed to get on writing some workshops. I need to put out 30 of them by the first of the year. I wasn't able to write a line of code until 1 o'clock because I was juggling way too much social media stuff. Actually, sir, I'm with you.
Yeah, is there a way to show like the project structure on the
The whole general project structure. We don't have the time to do that right now, but I can point you at an article on it. If you go to Code Magic, the wonderful people whose checks cash on time, you will see, what is it, Flutter 102.5, I believe, is the number of the article that I wrote. It's all about how to organize your Flutter app, okay, because there are almost no rules in how to organize a Flutter app. So it's not like Android where you have all your resource files and everything. No, this is the Wild West. So there are some things that are done by convention and there are some suggestions. But I show how to set up an assets folder in a way that is just like a resources setup. Also an app folder that is kind of like that where you can put your strings and your colors and everything like that. And we have breakdowns where pages and widgets. In a nutshell, when you do it in Android, when you open an XML file and you start your top level declaration, like constraint layout at the top, that's a page. Your widgets in Flutter would be your image view, your recycler view, things like that. So you have one folder that holds your pages, and then all the little pieces of content that go in them are held in a widgets folder. One last question, sir.
So 2 brief ones. So we've talked about the IDE. Which IDE do you use for that?
We are split very evenly in Flutter. They did a poll recently. It was 53% VS Code, 47% IntelliJ and Android Studio. IntelliJ and Android Studio have a bit better tooling. VS Code is a hell of a lot faster. And only VS Code can do live share where 2 people can work on the same project simultaneously.
And the other question, we talked a lot about like the view side of it, but what kind of architecture patterns are typically like most supported from like MVP versus MVVM?
Architecture patterns are not so much a big thing in Flutter. The only one really that's been pushed is MVSP, which is Model View Scope Presenter. Everybody is using state management setups. They're using Block, they're using Redux, they're using Scope Model, which is MVSP. Provider is an awful lot like Scope Model. Basically what they're doing a lot of times is a Redux-ish type setup where you're using your model and then you're keeping your business logic separate and then you've got all your UI stuff, your view, and we are still trying to keep unidirectional flow of data. We're just doing it in a different way. And a lot of people have different thoughts on how to do this, and there is a new Flutter state management system dropping out of the sky about every 20 minutes now. Okay, we can't even keep up anymore. Alrighty, folks, I wish we had more time, but we don't. They're waving at me to get out of the room. Thank you very much, and we'll be on.